It's the Tirconaill Tribune podcast once again for the 20th of May 2021. John Mackett here, Eamon McFadden taking a look across the pages, including the front one, and we have a predictable story, the Micah crisis, which we'll return to later on, but we have a beautiful picture here, and friends of Ramelton's singing heartthrob Malcolm Fisher, they're going to be thrilled with this beautiful picture. He's pictured with a model of his late brother Sammy's yellow Mini. Now Sammy was a well-known rally driver for a generation here, and Malcolm has got a replica of it in his hand here as he's looking at it, and a beautiful photograph in the other hand. So look out for that. We also range across the HSE being hacked by the wizard spiders, but inside we're going to go to Eamon to talk to us about a Ramelton girl, Catherine Greer.
Thanks, John. It's a great feature article here by our colleague Declan Kerr, and a great story and very well presented and laid out. So this is a story of a young Ramelton woman who, Catherine Greer from Ognish, and she's been using hearing aids since she was 5 years of age, and she was managing very well with them all through her school life until her later stages of her school years here in Mulroy College in Milford. Now, she's a third level student now, and she's a highly decorated sportswoman. But when her hearing actually deteriorated further, the family started to take a look at the possibility of her getting hearing implants, these cochlear implants. But the emergence of COVID and all of that made life an awful lot more difficult for her. She had been an expert lip reader all of her life. She had built up these skills from just her family, her friends, and all of that there. But of course, the use of masks and all that made the thing much worse. So I think coupled with all of that there, the option of going for a cochlear implant, which was always been there from her from when she was a young age, was always on the table, but only stood really a 50-50 chance of ever being successful. But there's a great story of the background of how she got to where she was and how she ended up in Blackrock Clinic not that long ago to receive the cochlear implant, and how that has had a very impactful, positive change in her life now. She's very well known. She's 20 years of age now, and she's been wearing the hearing aid since she was 5 years of age, and now that's been replaced with a mix of a cochlear implant and a hearing aid. But as I said, very well known in sporting circles. Her hometown club is Swilly Rovers, Lagan Harps. She played for Mulroy College, Ulster, Doncaster Rovers, and the Republic of Ireland, who she has represented internationally on a number of occasions. So a highly decorated person. She's the daughter of Monica and Alistair Greer from Ognish, and that's a feature that's well worth reading and quite lengthy, and a very positive story and a nice one to feed in.
Catherine is part of a legendary family from the Lost Side in Ramelton, both in farming and in soccer. Her great grandfather, the legendary John Greer, who built up a huge dairy herd and was a well-known figure. Right across the whole agricultural sector of East Donegal. Her grandfather then was Ivan Greer. He carried on the farming tradition, but he was also Mr. Swilly Rovers, a legendary character.
Oh, right, yeah. You know? She's following.
So, she's following in the traditional footsteps of one of the county's best known families. And one of her uncles, George Greer, would have won an All-Ireland Intermediate medal with Fanage United all of those years ago.
Glory team. So she's following footsteps in the farming sense as well, so you can read all about that.
Yeah. So from that we'll go then to something lighter from 20 years ago. And just glanced there when I was just reading through it there. Downings Brothers invest 3 million in crab fishing. And this was the fishing village of Downings was in fate. On Sunday afternoon, when 2 local boats were officially named by Marine Minister Frank Fahey, who was accompanied by Tourism and Sports Minister James McDade, the 2 crabbers are owned by the McBride brothers Pete and Hugh, and the overall investment exceeds £3 million. The boats were constructed in Holland and have just been delivered to the brothers, and they will allow the skippers to fish further afield in search of crabs, while at the same time it provides them with a greater number of other options. And those boats have fished very, very hundreds of miles away from Sheephaven Bay over the years, and indeed the McBrides have invested further indeed since that particular time.
Yeah.
But the other story that just caught my eye there, you know, how time flies. Taoiseach to open Holiday Inn. I happened to be along with Bertie Ahern on that particular afternoon. when he officially opened the £12.5 million pound Holiday Inn at the Dry Arch. That was the state-of-the-art building that was the biggest of its kind ever in Donegal, and it took almost 2 years to complete. And of course, Donegal and Hugh McGee and tourism and all of that thing were part of the legend of that era. Of course, it has now returned to being the Clanree. It's still a very thriving business, but that is from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And from that, we're coming back home to Mulroy Bay. What's this about this Blueway project?
Yeah, calls to develop Mulroy Bay Blueway. This is something that was, it's an idea that's been fostered by Hugh Hunter from Cranford, who Hugh runs, he's well known for adventure racing and adventure sports and all this type of thing. He runs his own company, Eco Atlantic Adventures, down in Mulroy. But he's picked up on this trend that's been happening down the country as we know that greenways have become very popular. There's down in Mayo and down in the southeast and all that, where you make use of the old railway tracks to provide a tourism track with sightseeing and all that to a great success. But there's a number of places along the Shannon waterways and different parts where they've developed a blueway, and a blueway is kind of the water equivalent of the greenway. And he thinks in Mulroy it would be absolutely top notch place for it, because there's that vast body of water. There's lovely scenery all around the shores of it. What have you, and he thinks that could become a new hub for a trail where people could kayak and learn to paddleboard and take diving lessons and things like that. So he's on a mission to try and promote that, and he thinks it'd be a great way to develop the area for tourism and what have you as well. So
and there's another element there in Mulroy Bay at the moment. Yeah, we've covered the sale of the Muffled Bakery and Flour Mills, or being on sale back in the past couple of months, and that is another magnificent potential for development there.
Oh, wow.
You know,
a great tie up with the like of this.
I don't know if there's any offers on it yet or not. I haven't heard from the auctioneers, but you know, it is a ready-made site if you have the money. It's suitable for probably the number of developments you could put on that are immeasurable, and it has the site.
Yeah,
you could build a hotel there.
You could, the water lapping up to it.
With today's modern technology for dealing with wastewater and sewage and all that, that would not be an issue.
Shouldn't be.
But the building as it stands is of no value or no service. It's just
the site, isn't it? Really,
it's beautiful. Like when you see the aerial shots of the actual location of the bakery itself and the site it's on, it must be very close to an acre. Plus, there's 2.9 acres along with that. So we would hope to hear something about that in the near future, because it does have great potential.
Potential's there for sure.
After that, then we are going to come back to Fanet, I think. First of all, we're going to take a look at our editorial this week, because it's Ireland's post office network on the cliff edge, and this whole argument for a public banking forum and a public banking system has been made many times before. However, we are reporting that it has continued to fall on deaf ears, because the pillar banks, and there are 3 of them, they have the keys to control the system, and they do not accept there's another way. Now, there are other ways, and we have one of them in Germany, the Sparkasse Bank, and we have the Kiwi Bank in New Zealand. Now, the reality is that a community bank run through the post office network, probably with along with agreement in the credit union movement, has the potential to kickstart the whole banking system in Ireland.
Yeah.
Because like in Germany, a mortgage starts at 0.25%. Consumer loans start at 1.49%. Here, the power banks charge very high interest rates. It runs to several multiples of this rate. So credit consumers are paying up to 14-15% on overdrafts, to tell us, because they don't qualify for term loans. Now, the reality is that the Kiwi Bank last year recorded a profit of $100 million. But why are we not doing that to our ailing post office system? It's a question we keep returning to and keep asking time after time.
Should be considered, all right.
But the other story that caught my eye there, because I know the man very well, is a fellow called John Canning from Port Salon. He's living in Dublin, but he's pictured along with his 2 youngest children, Carrie and Dara. And you'd imagine that they're sitting at the top of Tirconaill Mountain in that legendary scene down across the Golden Sands to Port Salon. In fact, they're sitting in the living room of their home in Dublin. And this is a giant photograph that was taken in mid-July last year at 11:15 in the evening. His late father, Dan Canning, would often talk about the midnight sunset, and John saw it often. So this scene was painted, and It's an acrylic on canvas measuring 150 centimetres by 100 centimetres, whatever size that is.
It fills this whole wall. I know it's a
Fills
fine picture.
it fills the whole room. I wouldn't want to have to pay for the cost of that kind of a painting.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful painting. It's a lovely snapshot.
Nice story too. Nice the way he can get his touch of home from.
So that
from
takes
there.
us back then,
back onto
the front page where we're dealing with Micah crisis, and McBrearty demands for a public inquiry here. Amid fears, and this is Declan Kerr's story again, amid fears that as many as 10,000 homes have been affected by Micah, Councillor Frank McBrearty has called for a full public inquiry into how the production of the defective blocks was allowed to continue for well over a decade in Donegal. He was speaking ahead of 2 Micah protest meetings in Letterkenny and Burkrana on this Saturday. Now this is a very forensically produced story by Declan, that he has talked to numbers of people, politicians, and also to 2 families who are severely impacted by the whole development. Like the Micah issue is going to be multiples bigger than we ever imagined, and the whole idea here, we had pyrite campaign here a number of years ago. Compensation was 100%. So the question has been asked, why should this be any different? Of course, the answer, there is no difference, except that this is up here in Donegal, and up here in Donegal, politicians don't really care about us, and that's the big problem.
That was in Dublin 4. You can imagine how quickly the problem will be addressed and what percentage will come back.
It would never have got to the floor of the Dáil even. You're going to look at a couple of other bits.
And then there's another bit you covered, the nice picture of on the front there as well. But the other thing is there's a new development of what they call the Q North Retail Park here in Milford, just out in Forquhar there, just out by the Lidl centre, and that now has been developed because many people would notice it from their passing over recent months, that it's sort of largely looks completed from the outside anyway, with a big shopping complex. But we have learned now that there's a new national retailer that's going to become, I suppose, effectively the anchor tenant for that section of it, known as Home Savers, and they have over 30 stores across the country now at the moment, including one already in Donegal town. So they're a big sort of homewares retailer, and that would appear that that's going to be sort of that development maybe over the weeks and months ahead, going to start to see it open and develop, and it'll be interesting to see how that pans on.
I suppose in a way it's a major step forward for Milford, and in another way it's almost contradictory. What happens to the retail sector on the Milford Main Street as we look out the window here, and there's really no movement of traffic.
Yeah.
A retail park is a great thing. It's an indication of confidence in the future in this town. Like Lidl was all of those years ago when it opened in 2010 or 11.
10, yeah.
And it's one of their most lucrative stores in the whole of the island.
Highly performing.
And the retail park will probably turn out much the same, because there's great spacious parking services there. There's going to be a range
Passing trade.
There's going to be a big range of tenants coming in there.
Yeah.
So it's going to pose a real challenge as to what happens to towns, not Milford alone, but to all other such towns. But in this instance, where you have a major retail park going in within less than a kilometre of the town, then there'll be a magnetic pull away from the town. At the same time, there's funding there from government sources for urban renewal. We haven't seen much of it in Milford in the last 30 years, and I don't hear much word of anything starting here. But in the meantime, let's wish that retail park and the owners of it very well, and here's to their success. And with that, can we just pack it in for this evening and probably look forward to visiting the retail park.
Get the feet up.
Thanks, Eamon.
Thank you, John.